Welcome to the Unapologetically Unstoppable podcast. I'm your host, Jeanette Peterson. And on this podcast, we talk about how to partner with the Holy Spirit with your business and how to grow businesses with practical tips and tricks. Get ready. Here we go. Welcome to the Unapologetically Unstoppable podcast. Today on the podcast, we've got Jessica Rice. Jessica is a visionary evolution coach, a certified ICF executive and leadership coach, speaker, and the host of the Hello You Show. She's focused on helping visionary leaders rise and create a lasting legacy they love. With over 15 years in corporate and high-profile government agencies, Jessica blends her experience in design, engineering, and corporate leadership with helping her clients tap into their zone of genius and discover their innate wisdom by blending her fascination with neuroscience and holistic wellness to achieve lasting transformation. She's been bridging the gap between organizational systems, individual leaders, and teams, and she's worked with industry leaders in tech, finance, healthcare, to include PayPal, Roku, Booz Allen, and some other large government agencies and firms. She's passionate about helping empower leaders with their natural gifts and embody authentic leadership prowess. Thank you, Jessica, for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeanette, for having me. I so appreciate you bringing me here.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about your business and your life and all the things. So we'll probably just start with, who is Jessica Rice?
I ask myself this every day. Who am I? So I do have a background in IT and corporate. I actually started out in graphic design and then moved my way up into engineering and director of engineering, which is then when I moved into coaching and really deciding that I actually wanted to help other leaders to be better leaders, provide organizations with the type of leadership that I think we all need, get out of maybe toxicity within our corporate cultures. So that became a lot more of a passion of mine. And so that's why I moved into executive coaching and now really enjoy working with different companies and different individuals to not only help them become better leaders, but also to really find what that true path is for them as they're continuing to rise up, in their careers.
Yeah. So how did you decide that was going to be your vision of being like, all right, how do I want them to know who they actually are and who they're created to be? That seems like a daunting task, honestly.
Well, I think it started truly when I was working after a while, because I moved from doing, graphic design. I actually majored in 3D animation. So it was
cool.
Very different. And then chasing the almighty dollar, kind of moved my way over into software engineering. I didn't love it. I just wanted to make a greater income for my family at the time. And as I was in that process, I was doing well. I was obviously moving up. I was being asked to participate in strategic planning, as I wasn't even given that title, but I was being asked to do this. And yet at the same time, I didn't really feel like I was using what I was here to do to the fullest. I had gone through some horrific things in my past, and at that same time was sitting there and kind of behind my computer. I remember working nights and weekends. I was watching my son getting older before my eyes, feeling like I was missing out on some of those things and just wanting to kind of bridge a gap for myself. And in that process, bridge a gap for, I think, so many other people who find themselves in similar situations.
Yeah, I think that I was very similar to you, watching my kids grow up without me being there. And I was like, how do I do something with the same income or more and be able to be there for my kids? It was a hard decision to get out of IT because, it's very lucrative. If you know what you know and you're good at it, whether you like it or not. That's where I was. I didn't like it. It was not my jam, but I was making great money.
Yeah. I think it truly can be like the golden handcuff sometimes that we feel like we're chained to that, but we do have other options.
Yeah. Yeah. So what made you realize that there were other options, and what was your first thing that you were like, okay, I'm going to try this and leave corporate for good?
Well, to be honest, I was also newly leading my team. And so I started looking into coaching more so, helping my team. But part of the story that I don't always tell too is that as I was rising up in my career, my marriage wasn't doing very well. We were struggling quite a bit. And I was also trying to grapple with different things that had happened in my life. So looking for different avenues that I could find some healing, that we might be able to either repair our marriage. But to be honest, I, at that time, had like one foot out the door and started going into the spiritual coaching, looking into different avenues down that path. I didn't know what coaching was at that time. So all of it was really new for me. I did find some healing in that journey. We're still married to my husband now. So something came along with that. But that's how I kind of fell into coaching, because then I realized that there was actually such a thing as executive and corporate coaching and leadership coaching and things to help on the other side, where I was actually trying to lead my team, but also trying to help my organization with some of the challenges that we were facing internally. And so that was the transition for me, and thinking through like, okay, coaching is something exciting and new, and I think I could be good at this.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said something about like going on this spiritual journey and just trying to find out like what life is and like who you are. And I would say that I had a similar experience. And like, I feel like in Romans 8:28, it says all things work together for the good of those who love him. And I feel like even though you weren't like 100% in the spiritual realm or whatever that was, good things did happen out of it. Like you still are still married to your husband. You're still like doing some of those things. Would you say that that led you to Jesus?
Well, I will say, so I actually grew up in the church. Well, probably around the time I was 12, my mom had been into New Age things when I was really young. And then we went to church, I think around 12. I actually started singing in church. I was very much a part of like missions trips and all of these different things. It's just that bad things had also happened at that time in my life that caused me to falter and to question even my own faith. I was in an abusive relationship as well when I was 19, 20, 21. And that was really challenging as well. So I already, I think God had already been in my life. And even though I kind of walked away for a little while, I never fully adopted anything else. And so moving into kind of this spiritual, it was very new age, very feminine goddess, all of these different things, which was somewhat new and intriguing, looking into the Gnostic Bible, all of these different pieces that I felt, kind of seductive at the time.
Yeah.
But it still didn't feel fully in alignment for me. And so I think coming back over to the other side was a combination. I had my son in Catholic school at the time. And so every day we were dropping him off and we're praying, and he's a part of that. And I wanted to make sure that that was more so a part of his upbringing. And then also realizing like, if I have all of these ambitions and passions, and I think that, some of these things had happened to me in my life for a reason, that I couldn't just rely on myself or my own manifestation to come forth and be successful. Like I couldn't pray just to the universe. It still always was Jesus for me. It still always was God. And that never really was replaced. And so there was some misalignment, I think, even in that explorative process for me.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's good to realize that you were like, I will take some of this and like, I'm not going to fully adopt all of the crazy, but I feel like, because it's very seductive, and it's very like, it wants you to draw, like, I mean, that's the name of the devil, right? Like he's like drawing you in and showing you how good it could be and showing you the love and showing you all these like slight perversions of the gospel and to make it look like it's this big other thing, and really it's not. And you can't ever feel the full love there and the full like grounding of knowing, the full knowing, right? That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing, because it's hard.
Oh no. Well, and there was this one point, I think, I really was starting to dive in deep. I even took a course with this woman on goddesses and finding your divine femininity. And as we were sitting there and she was calling forth, different Greek goddesses and all of these different things, and I remember sitting there thinking, this is all fake. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what are we doing? And I never could bring myself to, and they kind of went to this level of let's bring into Akashic records and start really opening ourselves up. And I could just feel in my spirit that wasn't right for me to be doing, and really just opening myself up in that way. And so there were definite strong moments where I was like, okay, you need to really figure out what it is that you're doing and come back to what you know is true.
That's so good. So how did you start going back into fully believing in Jesus, fully going back into that. How did that transformation come about?
I think, to be honest, it's been quite a journey, because being a part of, as an introduction into coaching on that realm, it started to, and you know how the Facebook algorithm starts to work, right? So you start paying attention to one thing, then that's like flooding and inundating you everywhere. So that's, to me at the time, it seemed like that was all of coaching outside of the corporate realm. Everything had this divine feminine kind of angle to it.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of that, and so I think it was really influencing me. And then the way that I was even starting to think about coaching and what does this really mean? And how do we work on mindset and breath work and ways that we can naturally help people holistically? Because I was also heavily into, essential oils and trying to find natural solutions to help people. It definitely was a process. I think I had like 3 website iterations where I had to start really recognizing like, okay, but this language that you're using, it's actually not quite right. The things that you're still kind of pulling in, like, cause I couldn't discern fully. I couldn't fully see even. I think that's where the blindness starts to happen.
Yeah.
So even until recently, I started to really just kind of draw that line, like, okay, no, I'm not trying to blend all of these things anymore. And I'm actually intentionally trying to separate myself with that and be more aligned with God and with Jesus and what he has as a calling for my life. But I think that this is actually taking quite a bit of intentionality because there's just so much noise out there.
No, there really is. And I feel like when I first came on, I had a business partner and we were doing a marketing business and we were like really heavy into like the military spouse world because we're both military spouses. And so we were like focused on them. And then we'd see like these coaches and then just like you said, all I could see was the feminine energy versus the masculine energy, the divine goddess, the crystals, the everything. Like it was just like I couldn't stop seeing it. And I was like, okay, well, they're making a lot of money, or seem to be. They're making the money I want to make. How do I do that without like abandoning my religion? Like it just didn't, I couldn't figure it out. And so I was like, all right, I gotta just hardcore be just straight up unapologetic about who I'm called to be in Jesus and what that looks like. And it's very intentional. You have to like make a hard pivot because that world will wrap you up, girl.
And I think it's scary because, right, that not everyone is very embracing that. It's a lot easier to embrace this free love flow kind of thing and try to be agnostic about it. But I also find that when I'm talking to people who are very much a part of that as their existence, they're offended if I'm not embracing it. And so that's something I'm also been feeling lately, even stronger. The more that I kind of draw that line in the sand, the more that I'm not in a big way, but just feeling that opposition where it's trying to kind of like either bring me back or they feel like that I'm, being untrue to myself. And I know you and I had a conversation around that. And so it's just interesting how some of those pieces work. But we were taking my son to church. He was a part of choir. It's funny how we make these justifications for things that we're doing, thinking that it's in alignment because we don't have to adopt everything or what anyone just like piecemealing our lives. But at some point it just like, no, you're trying to live a double life.
Yeah. Yeah. So now in your business, you help people kind of understand who they are and like what that big goal is. So what does that process look like for you now that you're like leaning more towards the God side versus the holistic side? Because I feel like there's another thing that you said in there about like they're very, to me, they seem very unapologetic about what they believe, what they say. And I feel like as Christians, it's a little bit harder for us because then we get judged as with hate or everybody is XYZ, everybody does this. And I'm like, I'm a Christian. I just love Jesus. That does not mean that I'm a Republican or a Democrat. I'm just me. Like, I don't want a label for anything else except for follower of Jesus.
I think, and I love this question because to be honest, the more that I'm able to separate that side of things, the easier and the greater clarity that I have on the actual business that I'm doing. The more that I'm able to divorce myself from using what you might consider to be like coach speak, but I think it's also more like new age coach speak, the greater I can actually lean into working with my clients in a way that let's talk about what your your vision is, your purpose, your higher calling. And we don't have to bring in all of that other stuff. It can really just be deeply rooted in what you're feeling and what it is that you think that you're here to do, and that calling for yourself without trying to attach it to anything else. I think there's just a lot of language and terminology. So I've just kind of been more deliberate now with how I speak and not incorporating some of that.
Yeah, I think that's really good. That's really good. Because like you said, it's just so hard to just like completely, it's so close. Because everybody out there that's a coach is doing the same, they say the same things, like that. And then I was like, I don't know if you ever got into this, but they were like talking about cycle syncing and then like free bleeding and like all this stuff. And I was like, this is like, but God made the moon and the tides do run on the moon. So I understand why it would affect my body. But like, I'm not worshiping the moon. That's weird. So like, it was a process of like figuring out and discerning. And like you said, I think sometimes we're just like not intentionally blind, but we're just so blind and can't see what the truth is until we are like, all right, I am purposely going to go this other way. I'm purposely going to do this other thing.
Yes. And I think, it has felt in greater alignment. I have greater peace about it. I didn't for a long time because I think I believed the lie, which is, we can't say be blessed. We can't say praise Jesus. We can't say certain things. And in corporate world, I had trained myself not to say certain things. But then it was interesting kind of being in that world where everything was blessed be, and it was very free with all these words. The interesting part too is that when I'm working with corporate clients, I have clients from all over the world. I have clients from Africa, from Asia and India, and they're not all, buying into that either. And so me having, I think, greater clarity around my purpose and what it is that's truly, aligned for me is that I can also honor and respect them in a greater way without having a muddied confusion that I felt in my mind for quite some time.
Yeah. That's so awesome. So why did you start this business specifically? Like when you were going from corporate to this business and you were like, all right, I have to do this because I hate my job or whatever. Like, what was that?
Yeah. Well, I think it was kind of the same business. It just kept morphing and I didn't know how to kind of make it different, because it was about 5 years of me going on the path of getting my ICF certification, going through multiple certifications. The things that I was interested in, though, that I was actually certifying in, because I never even actually finished the spiritual one. I just abandoned it. But were things on systemic teams, red team thinking, corporate strategy. How do we help organizations? How do we help people to be in their roles, to be better humans, and to be authentic leaders rather than trying to be something else? Because I've worked in companies where there's great levels of toxicity, and I can see how that negatively impacts performance and also the outcome. Like the business is spinning its wheels over and over again, wondering why. And oftentimes you can point right back to leadership and have a pretty good clue. So that was part of the reason as well. And I think once I started to really say, okay, this is what my business is for.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to involve all this other stuff in order for me to be a coach. Then it was like, okay, boom, this is actually the path. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This aligns with my background, my interests, everything else. And so that's kind of the line in the sand that I ended up drawing, which is why I went through several website iterations to just continually eradicate all of that stuff.
I think for me, similar to you, like I couldn't say all those things in the military, and like I couldn't say God bless you. And so like I just kind of like put like a wall up and like didn't want to say anything about it. Like, and then I've like been very open about my faith now and like what that looks like and how I'm learning. But I guess I don't even remember what my question was going to be. Like I was going to say that and then ask you a question. So fun facts about Jeanette, I guess.
Well, and it's funny when you're saying that too. It does make me think, because I do work with, people who are Muslim as well. And they also are very passionate about their faith also. And so when I'm able to tell them like, okay, but I do go to church and I do have faith, I think that in some ways, it's almost like we understand each other better than me coming in from this kind of woo-woo side and just, off in some other planet.
I love that. I love that. Oh, I think my question was going to be more about like the integration of maybe not your faith, but the integration of like how you like to help people.
So when I'm working with corporate clients, a lot of times they're coming in and they either want to up level in their role because it's important. I know we want to continue to grow in our careers and grow in our role and grow in wealth. But sometimes too, they're also feeling conflicted, either because they're not quite in the right role or right position. They're ready to transition to something else. It doesn't feel like it's, in alignment with maybe some of the things that have happened in their past. And so what I often try to help people to understand is that we are so much more than the job that we currently have. And our experiences, our expertise, our skills, everything that we bring to the table is a culmination of our entire lives, which is why I ended up calling myself the Vision Evolution Coach, because we are continually evolving. We're always changing and growing. And so if we can look at ourselves in that way, when I ask them, what are other things that you bring to the table, similar to thinking about your zone of genius, now we can start opening up different doors because we're not limiting ourselves. Well, this is my role now. These are the duties and the things that I'm responsible for now. And we can look at other aspects. For me, it was when I was speaking with college students, even who were ready to kind of move into their careers, I'd often ask them, like, what other jobs did you have? Sometimes they didn't have jobs, which was always a little mind blowing for me. What do you mean? I had like 4 jobs while I was in college at the same time.
Right.
But, waiting tables was one for me. Like I was able to draw so many experiences from that led me to my communication skills in the corporate realm. So if you start thinking about all of the different facets of your life, I think then we can start to piece together, okay, this is where I'm actually could really be beneficial and be really helpful for the world and also feel like I'm in greater alignment for myself.
I think that was kind of the answer that I was actually looking for. Because I think I was going to ask you something about like when you move out of corporate, like for me, I put that everything before that in a box. And I realized, wait a second, I don't have to put all that stuff in a box. I can use those skills that I earned those skills. I learned that information. I can use that stuff in my business. And I always felt like I had to isolate those things and be like, all right, well, I guess I'm starting over as a new person. But that's not true. You have those skills that you earned as you were a kid and whatever you were doing. And yeah, that's the perfect answer for the question that I didn't even ask.
Well, and it's ownership. And so I think it's the same thing when we leave corporate too. I've talked to a number of people sometimes where it's like, oh, and how you got out of corporate and good for you. And now you're on your own. And it's like, I think if we can embrace all of ourselves and how we marry that together as this is my expertise. This is what I truly bring to the table. I have all of this. This is what you're getting. It's the full package. I coach a lot of transitioning special operatives. They're terrified coming out of 20 years in service and they're Navy SEALs, they're Marine Raiders, they're Green Berets. I'm like, in my mind, like, what are you nervous about? But to them, they're thinking, well, what could I even possibly contribute to the civilian workforce? And thinking, so much. You have so much that you bring because you have done things that people can't possibly imagine. We're putting leaders into roles simply because they did a good job as an individual contributor, but their leadership skills are incredibly lacking. So there's just, it's just greater awareness into ourselves and truly owning it.
Yeah, I don't know about for you, but as a woman, like I was the general manager at 21 of a Jiffy Lube with all dudes. And like, sometimes I want to suppress that because it makes people uncomfortable or it makes people feel like, is she trying to be a man? Like just all these like intrusive thoughts about femininity and blah, blah, blah. And I had to realize that is part of who I am. God created me to do those things and God created me to have those skills and to be resilient and all this stuff. And just now in my late 30s, am I coming to realize that I can be all of those things and I don't have to be ashamed of any of it because I was created this way and I'm okay with being more than just a mom, being more than just a XYZ and being empowered into that. So I'm glad that you take those people and do that because a lot of people, especially in the military, we don't know what we can bring to the table for corporate. We don't know how to write a resume. We don't know how we could help. And we don't even understand, like at 25, you're leading teams of 30 into the desert to do these special operations. And like, some of these adults have never led a team out of the room, right? Like,
Right.
like,
Right.
so like,
No.
it's good to be reminded of that all of those skills you have compound. It's not, you leave them, you earn those certificates, you earn even if they're expired, you still earn that knowledge. You still have that knowledge in there. So good.
I mean, it's all foundational. It's just like when we're homeschooling our kids. I mean, often, I don't know about your kids, but my son's always asking, like, why do I have to learn this? What's the point of this? This seems, mundane, or, other words, I'm sure, and it's all foundational. Like, you have to learn this in order to reach that next level for here. And we don't always know what God's plan is. We don't know what the next level might be for us until we've gone through some of the different foundational aspects of our lives. And that's how I was able to start looking for, even at myself, and come to terms with things that happened in my life. Not that I wish it on myself and I would wish it on anybody else, but they were foundational for me and how I started to think about myself as well. And so I don't even look at it now and think like, oh, I wish this never happened. I just think, okay, it's a piece of me. It's not all of me, but it's enabled me to think about, okay, how do I bring these other gifts into greater fulfillment?
Yeah. It's not who I am. It's just a thing that happened and I can move forward from that and learn those things. That's so good. I think as people who have had trauma, it's very easy to get stuck in the victim of it and just stay there. And then to like grow out of that, to mature, to do the therapy, to do the hard work. And then to finally be like, I am not a victim. This stuff happened. I have learned. And now I can maybe help somebody else. Maybe I can be a sounding board for somebody else who's gone through something hard. You wouldn't be able to do that if you had not had that learned experience, as unfortunate as it was. You know what I mean?
And I think those are the times too. It's like when God shows up strong for us, or at least for me too, is just, even if maybe I haven't forgotten pieces of that or whatever in my life, in those trying moments, then it's so strong, and you can recognize that he's always there for you and he's carrying you through it. I wouldn't have been able to make it through that abusive relationship on my own. I had medical issues that happened later. My colon ruptured. I needed to have an emergency surgery. I had a colostomy bag for 6 months. This was my senior year in college. And then I had to have a reversal surgery so that I could, quote unquote, be normal again. Those moments is when he showed up for me. And I remember praying with my mom and thinking through different things that, was like, okay, I'm here for a reason. I'm not here to die just yet. So what is that purpose for me? And I think even moving into coaching, when I was sitting there behind my computer, like I'm just typing away, making an e-commerce website, like how is this contributing to my life, and how is this contributing to the greater story that I think that God has given for me to fulfill? And it's not about me, but am I using this in the greatest capacity? Am I using my life in the greatest capacity?
Yeah. I think that's where people get that feeling of inadequacy, not feeling fulfilled, like maybe even anger, like where your life is. And if you don't know where your purpose is, you will never feel fulfilled through Jesus. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's like never too late.
No, it's not.
And I think that's we need to recognize that, just like because this thing happened, or now we feel like we are older. I was talking to someone else this morning who's like, well, I didn't start college until I was 40. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we have choices. As long as we're living, we have choices in how we continue to bring forth the fruits that he has given us, and how we can be of better service.
Amen. What's one thing you learned on your journey that makes you unstoppable?
It's kind of a weird one. I think when I was growing up, I never really thought of myself as very strong. I was always very timid, very soft-spoken. I still am to a certain extent, unless I get fiery. He asked my husband, he might say something else, but I didn't think of myself as a fighter. I didn't participate in sports like that. I was in ballet. I did, drama and stuff like that. And there was this part, and it's odd that it comes from this place, but when I was in this really abusive relationship, I will remember that he said to me, I didn't think that you would be such a fighter. I didn't think that you would be this strong. And I remember at the time feeling a little taken aback. I didn't know what to think about anything really, to be honest, but I was taken aback because number one, I didn't think of myself that way in that scenario. Number two, it was weird that he recognized it as he was trying to continually, beat me down. And I carried that forward for every time that I would look back at that scenario or other scenarios that happened in my life and remind myself, like, you've made it through this, not alone, but you're strong enough to make it through this, and you're strong enough to make it through the next thing. And you're going to be strong enough to make it through the next thing. And it's going to work out.
I love that. I'm like on the verge of tears, like thinking about it. And like, I was in a very abusive relationship also, and I was not strong. And so like you just being able to be strong and being like for real, and him recognizing and being like, man, I thought you would have given up by now. Like, I'm just trying to like continually beat you down, and she's not doing what I want her to do. I love that. I love that.
Well, I'm not fully. I mean, I did do the things that he wanted me to do, but I did not feel strong at the time for sure. But I also felt like, and I'll be honest, it was such a fight. And then, whenever I meet someone else who's gone through that, it's like these experiences are so hard and personal, and they're all unique as well. But I remember like the last night before I actually was able to escape, I wanted to give up. I felt like, why am I fighting? What am I, like this is so hard. And I had no self-esteem. I had like, everything was just super bad. It was just bad. It was bad. And that's when God came through, and I could hear basically like, I'll never leave you. You're never alone. And that's when like the next morning I woke up, because he kind of held me prisoner. I'm like saying this in the very lightest way, but he did. And he kind of barricaded the door and all these things. And I didn't have a car or anything. And so I was able to have I felt like the last bit of strength to muster and get out. And I just ran. I ran out of the house, and I hid in our neighbor's garage while I waited for my dad to come and get me.
Oh my God.
But I remember that night before, because I really was kind of like, just take me. Just take me. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing that story, because that is obviously not a fun, happy story. That is not an Instagram highlight reel, but it is so needed that, one, people who hear this podcast will know that they are not alone, and that even in your darkest hour, God was still with you, and he was still motivating you and still pushing you forward to give you the strength to do what you need to do. And sometimes we get to those points and we're just like, I don't have anything else to give. God's like, no, I got you. I got you.
Yeah, I think that definitely. I think you summed it up perfectly. Is that, yeah, we're never alone, and it's never too late, and we're never too washed up or too used up or too beyond repair. I mean, there was drugs involved. There was all kinds of horrible things involved. And I didn't know like what could I possibly give to anybody else at that time in my life, I felt. And I think that's such a key message for anyone who's going through that or anything else. I mean, there's so many times in life where we start to think like those thoughts, like, we're too old. My time has passed. I mean, it can be simple and benign. It doesn't have to be completely horrific. And it's just not true. These are lies that I think that we can tell ourselves in our mind, and the way our minds sometimes work, and thoughts from the enemy. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. What would you say is your favorite Bible verse, and why?
So I had to look it up, but I think what had come to me at the time was Psalms 46, was that, God is our refuge. I have to read it to you because I don't have it, but he's our refuge and our strength, and ever-present help in trouble. And therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God.
That is so good. So good. And I can see why it's your favorite one, because like literally God has been your refuge over and over and over. Like sometimes I think like you were kind of saying, like, if I mess up, like, why would God still want to bring me back home? Like, why would, like, I am so far gone. Like, I had periods with drugs and stupid things in my life too. And I was like, what is the point? Like, why would he want me? why me? Why I am not special. But like he just does. And he continually forgives us and he just loves us and he just wants us to be near him. And so like I think like it's different for people who have never done anything quote unquote bad. But I just feel so like, what's the right word? So like honored that I can even talk to God, like that he even would let me talk to him, and that Jesus would die on the cross for me, like, and all of my stuff, it's just, I get very emotional about it.
It's so big. It's hard for me to grapple with it sometimes. Like, I still know, I think I still struggle to really just understand the full enormity of all of it. And I think I still see, it's like, I still don't, it's easier to tell someone else, I think it is, to like that they can look and believe in themselves than it is to tell ourselves, even today.
Yeah. I think some of my podcast episodes are literally me talking to myself. And it's for me. So I can listen to it and be like, all right, I got this.
Yeah. I mean, we are constantly having to do the work, right? We're constantly having to, every morning, it's like I'll wake up and I think maybe something bad or negative or whatever, about like something that's not going the way that I would like, I'm ready for it to be moving in a different direction, or it's not going the way I'm hoping it will, or whatever. And I have negative self-talk. And then I literally will go into the shower and then I'll start talking to myself differently. And then like, okay, no. And I have to do that. And then I'm praying and I'm like, okay, you've got this. And so by the time I come out of the shower, it's like I'm a different person.
Yes. I love that. So
I don't know what the shower is about.
I mean, like sometimes with the kids, I'm like, all right, I will get a good shower in and I can like be alone. But like, it's not every day that I get alone time in the shower, homeschooling. But I mean, your son's older though. So I'm sure he like leaves you alone most of the day.
Well, somewhat. He'll be 11 in a couple weeks. So I'm already practicing. He's saying 11, but I don't know. He still doesn't seem to have any boundaries. There's boundaries with with my husband, with dad, but there's no boundaries with mom.
Same. I'm like, I love you. I want to be your safe space, but like sometimes I just need some alone time.
Yeah. This is a private moment.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they move forward with working with you? What does that look like?
You can find me on Jessica Rice Coaching. You can find me on LinkedIn at Jessica Carl Rice, which is my maiden name. And yeah, I mean, just reach out to me on there. I'm happy to talk to anyone. If you have questions, anything that you want to share, whatever, you can find me. But it's been such a blessing to be on here. Thank you so much. I feel honored to meet someone else who has a similar spirit and goal. And it's helping me even to find that alignment and confirmation, for my own business and for myself.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Jessica. Yeah. My pleasure. I just do what God tells me to do at the end of the day. Like, I'm just like, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but well, all of that will be in the show notes. So if you want to get in touch with Jessica, just go ahead and look at the show notes. Her LinkedIn, her YouTube will be there. Her website will be there. Just contact her and be her friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Go ahead and leave a review to let everybody else know how much this episode has impacted you. And you know what? I would love to get to know you even better. So go ahead and send me a DM over on Instagram at Jeanette.Peterson or come to my free group at JeanettePeterson.com/group. I'll see you guys over there.